Connecticut Department of Public Health. And I'm joined by Shannon Rader Ginsberg from Yukon Extension. This listening session is designed to help child care providers who are participating in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, to understand the application process for the Farm to ECE program, which is a mini grant program to support site implementation of Farm to ECE projects. We also have some people in the background. That's Monica Bellier, who's also a nutrition consultant, along with Zania, Abby, and some other folks helping us with some technical assistance. I will now turn it over to Shannon to begin our presentation.
You're all muted. Hello, everyone. So next slide. So what we're going to be doing today and covering this info session, as Deb said, is sort of the why, the what and the why of what farm to early care and education is and how it works for your child care center. And then more about specifically this grant and what that application process is. So this is just a little bit of what we're going to cover. We will have questions. I invite you to put your questions into the chat. Monica Bellier will be answering the ones that can be easily answered, and then we can just take a look at it. And then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A at the very end as well to make sure all your everything is clear. So next slide. Just these are the folks who've come together to offer this. This is a USDA farm to school grant that the Department of Public Health has received and is partnering with Yukon Extension, Connecticut Farm to School Collaborative. Put local on your tray. Next slide. So broadly speaking, farm to early care and early care and education initiatives connect schools, local farms, and communities as part of a movement to strengthen local food systems and invigorate local food economies by sort of shortening the distance that dollar travels and that your food travels, and also to create a relationship between healthy eating, local eating, seasonal eating, culturally representative foods with our agricultural community, which has wide-ranging and positive impacts. So when we say farm to early care, there's generally sort of three areas that means is local procurement, which is just buying local food, getting local Connecticut grown or regionally grown food into your programs. And then also what we think of as gardens. So garden-based education, being outside with students, kind of having hands-on relationships to actually growing the food themselves and watching that process, which from, starting at any age is, just very beneficial and aligns very well with the activities you're already doing. And then the final thing would be sort of food and agricultural education, or what we call community or community engagement. So this is going out to field trips, to farms, going to farmers markets, inviting people into your center who are representatives of the food system and can do cooking, nutrition, farmers coming in, talking about their work. So that sort of community extension. So farm to early care is kind of like all of those things layered together. It can be very broad. So next slide. And just generally, farm to early care is connecting children and their families and caregivers in the community to knowing where their food comes from, how, that it's beyond what happens beyond the bag or beyond the grocery store, and that it is a universal right to have access to healthy, clean fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, etc. And so the deepening impacts of like where your food is coming from and what are the benefits to flavor and freshness and health and nutrition and the environmental impacts. So I'm going to go kind of quickly through these first slides, but that's sort of what we're talking about when we can kind of go on and on and on about why farm to early care is such a benefit to your program. So next. How does farm to early care and education help, like doing these projects, which I think many of you here might already know because you're already interested in this grant. But much of the learning of farm to early care curriculum, it overlaps health and nutrition, outdoor play, other best practices and other domains of learning that you're already doing, whether it's science or fine and gross motor skills, like handling tiny seeds or digging with a shovel, language and communication, observation, all these things that you're doing already can be achieved also through early care curriculum. It really touches everything. And of course, this is the age to really have experiential, hands-on lessons to help shape these healthy habits. So there's lots of research that backs up positive impacts of involving young children in healthy food experiences and therefore also farm to early care. All right, next slide. And I talk fast, so if there's if someone needs to flag me down to slow down, that's okay. So more than any other age group, infants and young children rely on their caregivers to create food environments, that positive food environments. So caregivers, as you all know, you influence the availability and accessibility of foods, the structure and socialization around these meals, and the modeling of positive eating behaviors. So many of the young children that they're there for many hours of the day. They might be getting their most balanced and healthy meals through your programs. And it's just such a critical time to establish those healthy eating patterns. Even the 1-year-olds, they're watching the 3-year-olds. So that we know these young children, they're so observant. So one statistic here is that 80% of children who are in full-time daycare, 80% of their daily nutritional needs are being met in their childcare. So these eating and physical activity patterns are established during infancy and these preschool years, and they can determine eating and activity patterns for later in life. So, which is really remarkable. So next slide. And as you can see here, farm to early care and education benefits across the child care community of caregivers. It expands this reach to include farmers and food and health justice advocates. It helps address equity, diversity, and culture within your for the children within your care. So beyond the spectrum of children and educators, your support staff, families and communities, when you are doing these farm to early care activities, you're really broadening who is engaged in the caregiving work around, again, food and education. Next slide. So this grant can help you get started or can strengthen the work that you have already been building on. Grant recipients will be receiving technical assistance and support to achieve the goals you set, especially around involving parent and community involvement and also shaping the budget. So you will get the award. And as part of this application process, you should ask yourself a couple of questions. Two, specifically being, what do you want to accomplish? And we know there's 2 tracks, which we'll get to a little bit, but what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to bring food into your center to serve? Do you want to deepen your garden activities? Do you want to be visiting? How are you going to bring this into the community? So what do you want to accomplish with this money that this grant awards? And then what is most beneficial for my home daycare or for my center? What will be most beneficial? Thinking about the caregivers, the children, the culture of your community. Which grant track will best meet your goals, the garden grant or the community supported agriculture grant, which we'll talk more about what those 2 things are. And that will help lead to a stronger grant application. All right, next slide. And then again, what I want to say about that last slide is, if you are already doing some of this work, how can this grant help sustain, because unfortunately we can't give you money forever, but how can the technical assistance and the money that comes with this help you to create some sustaining plan for what you've been doing and where you want to go? So engaging parents and community members, this is going to come up a few times, already has in this info session. It's a very important part of this grant. We know the younger the children are and the deeper you engage their community, the more lasting the impact. So strong applications will include clear and achievable ideas for engaging parents and community. Lots of ideas here. Some ideas are to invite parents and community members to contribute recipes for what they cook at home with seasonal or garden fresh foods. Asking your stakeholders for ideas and feedback, even on this grant before you were to submit it. Garden open house or work days, cooking, small cooking classes, engaging caregivers in picking up the farm share or taking field trips to farms or to farmers markets. And there's a link here that I will drop into the chat that has lots of different ideas for you to kind of go deep. So I don't know if the link made it into that. So we'll either follow up or one of the co-hosts here will find this resource, the Full, Equal, and Equitable Partnerships with Families. It's a Connecticut resource. Okay, next slide. Taking action. I think that's where we are. So once you've identified your goals, maybe potential challenges that this funding can help overcome, your partners, administrators, if that is, if that works for your center, you're ready to take action. So think about some action plans, how you'd be able to sustain the work after the grant period. Of course, knowing what flexibility you have, because things don't always happen as you envision, and that's okay for this grant. There's not a lot. We're not going to be looking for a lot of reporting. What we're looking for is for you to share the experience back, which is in the documents about your application process. So to utilize your resources in relationships, in the actions you want to take on, and finally to remember again to connect with community. There is going to be a process that your technical assistance advisors will lead you through in order to track and take a self-assessment and kind of checking back with your goals and then a final assessment. So that'll be part of this. Next slide. So again, just a couple different implementation activities we've shared about this. So this is just, again, to reiterate again, some of these ideas fit better into track one, the track with the community supported agriculture, where you will receive product from a farm, or the other track, which is the garden expansion development, the Grow Gardens kit. So if you wanted to deepen gardening, do some indoor gardening. So if you think about the goals you want to achieve, and then see what fits better. And there's a little bit for both. So it's, you can still integrate local foods in the garden grant, and you can still do some gardening with your CSA grant, but it's going to be more about what the main thrust of your goal would be. So next slide. Okay. Just again, a few things to remember when you're thinking of your ideas and putting your plans together. When you're starting an ECE project, is to start, where does this already align with your activities you're already doing, right? A lot of this is like, you're already doing it. Maybe you just need some more specific materials. Maybe you want to get some resources to help deepen your own ability to teach farm to early care topics. Focus on activities that work well. If you have a tiny yard that's mostly in the shade, maybe growing a garden outside isn't going to work that well for you. If you don't have a lot of ability to cook or to handle fresh foods, maybe indoor gardening, herbs, pots, like thinking about to kind of like let it meet you where you're at rather than getting really overly ambitious. So focus on efforts that work well for you. And then of course, considering the background of the families that you're serving. And then also don't be afraid to try something new. For some of you, this might be totally new, and that is an exciting place to start as well. For folks that might be pretty advanced, if you're really trying to up your game or even share the work you're doing with other childcare providers, you can get really creative. So, next slide. All right. This is an opportunity to have fun. We don't want you getting bogged down with we don't want to see, if we see some applications so we're like, well, this is a really ambitious idea. Make sure you're considering your staffing and, who's going to implement these things, that people are on board so that you can be creative and have fun with it. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Deb to get into the next section.
Okay, thank you, Shannon, for providing us that great introduction to Farmed ECE and the ideas for implementation. I'm now going to talk about the resources and funding available to you all who are thinking about applying for the Farm to EC project. And next slide, please. I wanted to include this slide here. This is one of our previous providers who submitted some of her photographs from the last Farm to ECE cohort. We have several of those photographs, and I just wanted to include one so that you can see how one of the programs included their children in their gardening project. Next slide. So both awards are $1,075, whether or not you choose the CSA, which is the Community Supported Agriculture Program, or the Learn to Grow project. The CSA Box program will focus on procurement, as Shannon mentioned previously, and it will connect ECEs directly to farms and local food by matching them with a CSA farm business in your vicinity. The Learn to Grow garden program will focus on the development or the expansion of on-site gardens, and as Shannon mentioned, again, you might have inside gardens as well. Funding resources and support to child care providers to support innovative projects that strengthen relationships between children and nutritious local grown food is the basis of this grant. Next slide. In order to be eligible, providers must be licensed centers, but cannot be part of the school district, unfortunately. But there are grants out there that are promoting the school district. This one is not. Some providers refer to the CACFP as the food program and the nutrition program. I think that's important to mention in case you're not familiar with the acronym CACFP. So if you hear CACFP, it is what is the food program or the nutrition program. ECEs will be selected using a competitive process, and there will be 25 slots available, approximately 25 slots. Next slide. It's important that you review the guidance document before getting started, because this will help you be prepared for the application. The applications will only be accepted when submitted through the website that we're going to, the web link that we're going to provide. And they will be available in both English and Spanish to address equity and encourage family providers who are Spanish speaking providers. Next slide. The application questions will include questions about your site, about families that you serve, and how you plan to engage partners in your work um, through your work, whether you choose the CSA or the Learn to Grow projects. Each application will be scored to measure commitment, readiness, and the ability to implement the required activities. At least 50% of those awarded will be in the priority zone, and the consideration will be given to ECE programs that serve children and their families in their zone. Each application will be scored to measure commitment, again, readiness, and their ability. Can't stress that enough. And as an applicant, you will have two options: the CSA, which is the community supported agriculture option, or the Learn to Grow, which is the garden option. With this project, providers can start a vegetable garden and programming for hands-on learning customized to your ECE program. You can build skills, garden skills, and plan for sustaining your garden activities with children. And the gardening includes indoor and outdoor growing and small-scale garden starter kits. Next slide. We will have a Q&A webinar to include requirements for the CSA and Learn to Grow with a focus on either local procurement or gardens. We want you all to be realistic with the activities you are proposing, because this is a small grant and it goes very quickly. In the preceding slides, we'll show you an example of a budget to give you some ideas on what you can spend your funds on. Next slide. Selected applicants will receive their funds to support program implementation upon the completion of specific program activities. If awarded, your TA will assist you with creating a budget that fits the allowable expenses. And the allowable expenses should be realistic for the project and match your activities again. The allowable expenses will be purchasing materials to create on-site gardens, like raised beds or windowsill projects, sponsor visits to local farms or gardens, purchasing local foods for taste tests or for food demonstrations with children and staff and families, also for other local education activities. Next slide. And I'm going to turn this part over to Shannon. I hope I'm not speaking too quickly. We have quite a bit of information to go through. Shannon's going to explain what the CSA is and further instruct us along. Shannon?
All right. So we keep talking about CSA. This is an abbreviation for, it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And I just wanted to make sure that it's not the greatest explanation of what that actually is. So just to be clear, it is a subscription. It's like getting a magazine subscription. So it's a subscription to a single specific farm. And so what will happen is you receive the funding and you will pay the farm, a farm that has a program, a CSA type program. And what that means is you pay ahead in early spring, and then a single sum, generally, with the award from the grant. And then you will receive every week, once their harvest starts, which tends to be in early, mid, late June, sometime in June, a share of the harvest, and that can be every week. It can be every 2 weeks. There, you can work it. You'll be able to work it out a little bit with the farm and the farmer. So, and in that box or bag or bin, you will get a selection of the fruits and vegetables that farm is harvesting that week. So it will change throughout the season, and it pardon me, to be a little smaller in the beginning of the season with like greens and radishes and herbs. And then you get in the summer and you get into like early tomatoes and zucchinis and cucumbers. And so that happens over the course of the season until early or mid October. Some farms only go through September, where you get into the winter squash and things like that. So not all farms have, of course, like apples and pears or sweet corn. You have vegetable farms. So if you are awarded this, if you have a farm in mind that you want to work with, that's great. It's totally not necessary. That's also what the technical support is going to help, is to try to find a farm that works well for you, that's in your area. So when you get this box, sometimes, and each farm does it a little bit differently, you might pick it up at their farm stand or at a farmer's market. In some cases, it might be able to be delivered to you. Maybe you'll organize some families to take turns picking the box up, the bin. It's just another way to integrate community into this. The CSA track, community supported agriculture track, is great if you want to incorporate new foods, do educational activities around local and seasonal produce, taste tests. This food can also be shared with your community in various ways. And it's really a learning curve. So you're going to get stuff in your box and you're like, I don't know what a kohlrabi is, but you're going to be working with the farmer. Farmers send newsletters, they're communicating with their customers about what they're going to get that week and maybe a recipe idea and so on. So that is what, when we say CSA, not all farms have a CSA program. Maybe they only do farmers markets, maybe they only have a farm stand, but that's part of the TA, is for us to find a good partnership for you to then deepen that relationship with a farmer, and especially urban farmers and urban agriculture. This is a great opportunity for them also to work with a small program and help shape that box a little bit to your needs. So it's a little bit of back and forth. If you have questions about CSA, or if it still sounds confusing, just put that in the chat. And then we'll go to the next slide, which is about the Learn to Grow and the gardening. So on-site gardens established during the Learn to Grow project requires like several activities to be carried out so that you can have a successful garden project: planning, engaging this with staff and families, purchasing supplies, expanding or building. One great way to make connections to farmers as well is, buying seedlings from farmers at farmers markets, buying seeds from, and again, part of applying for this grant isn't that you just get the money and you go off and do your thing, but there is technical assistance. We want to support the growth and development of your gardens. Do you want to try something indoor, some indoor growing? Have you want to do pots and more container gardening and so on? So thinking about how can you use that in your curriculum. So next slide. So the next two slides are sample budgets. So again, you do not have to submit a budget as part of this. However, and this, again, we're going to share these slides with you, so you'll have them as a way to see if you have an overly ambitious idea for the amount of the award. So more or less, for a CSA, they cost between $500 to $700 for the food. And again, that's for over a 3-month period of time, 12 weeks or more. So the bulk of that money is going to go for you to pay for that. And then the rest of the money, how can you use that money for the other goals? So this is just a little bit of an idea generally of like how you want this money to be spent. You will not have to provide receipts. You don't have to prove your expenditures. This is for planning and organizing the funds. So if you go to the next slide, this is for the Learn to Grow grant. What's been provided here is a soilless hydroponic unit. Could cost $325. Outdoor raised bed, just to build it, is about $200 to $300. So you're not going to do all of those things. You're not going to do I mean, maybe if you want to. So this is again just to give you some ideas about like how far does $1,000 more or less go? It's not a ton of money, and we want you to make sure part of the budget goes also for this family engagement. Is it to take a field trip? Is it to print recipe guides? Is it to this budget here really shows a lot of the kind of nuts and bolts. Implementation activities here were $50. Maybe this was for a site last round that really had a lot of implementation activities already underway. They were already doing it, so they just wanted to up their game a little bit. So that's just again, and somebody will. We have both of our TA providers here, Zania and Abby. This is part of what they'll be helping you do, is to figure this out. And it's back to Deb now.
Okay, so we wanted to include a timeline as a snapshot so that you can, when we send out this PowerPoint, so that you can refer back to it in one slide. So beginning at the top, the application announcement has already gone out. This is the reason why you all are here today. So many people are here today. That went out on December 5th. We are in the listening session today. There are two. One you are attending right now at 1:15. The other one is at 6:15. And the next step in the process is the application, when it is due. And that's going to be due January 22nd of next year, which is right around the corner. As soon as Christmas comes, it's going to be January 22nd. We will notify the providers who have been awarded their amounts on February 2nd. So that's very quickly right after the application is due. Those who have been awarded will attend a virtual orientation. We will email them along with the paperwork that's needed. So that might be the vendor paperwork. If you're not already a vendor, which many of you are, you'll be filling out forms. If you're not, an LOC, which is a letter of commitment. We already have the draft of that, and you'll just have to read through what is required and then sign off on that. And the project start date is the same for both. Whether you've chosen the CSA, the Community Supported Agriculture, or the Learn to Grow Garden project. What is going to differ is the final assessment, when your final assessment and final projects are due. For the Learn to Grow, it's going to be July of next year, July 31st. And for the Gardens project, the Learn to Grow Gardens project, I'm sorry, for the Learn to Grow Gardens project, it's July 31st. And for the CSA, it is October 31st of next year. One thing I did want to point out that it's important to note that the Department of Public Health may request additional information of the sites after those due dates to inform our overall program evaluation. We may need some additional information, for example, a success story or an interview, or someone, a lead staff wants to participate in some type of interview. So we may contact you after those dates. Next slide. So each provider will be assigned a technical assistance support person. I believe that's Zania and Abigail, if my memory serves me correctly, to work with you upon enrollment. There'll be some type of onboarding call with your TA provider. If you prefer email or in person, that may be available to you through your TA provider to support you through this process. You will have access to your provider through online training, as well as through the through the paperwork, helping you through paperwork and whatever questions that you may have. Next slide. Okay, we've talked about forms and self-assessment, and I wanted to show you the exact form that you will be using. We will provide the link to this form to those who have been awarded. So you will have access to this. For this cohort, providers will use this self-assessment and action plan created by the National Farm to School Network and the Association of State Public Health Nutritionists. This is a simplified form which asks providers about their buying and serving location, process, what they've done. That's if you choose a CSA, and the sample self-assessment for garden activities, which would be for providers who choose to learn to grow gardens. The TSA consultant will also have the link to help you with this assessment throughout the process. Next slide. Again, this is the self-assessment part of the form for the gardening activities. The first slide was for the CSA, so you'll have a chance to look at that. Next slide. So in conclusion, I want to summarize. Hopefully you all have gained a better understanding as to why Farm to ECE is beneficial to children, helps them learn, about fruits and vegetables, how they're grown and where foods come from. So you'll want to be sure to complete the application by January 22nd, 2024. If you're applying for the grant, again, you'll be notified February 2nd, 2024. After which you'll complete your first self-assessment, which were the forms that I just from the previous slides that we just went over. And then you'll get started in implementing your garden or your CSA project. Next slide. So I'm not sure if there are any questions in the chat that were already addressed. Does anyone have any questions about either the CSA, community supported agriculture, or the garden, Learn to Grow garden project? If so, we'll honor. Looks like we have a question. Does being license exempt mean you are not eligible for this grant? Are you a family daycare provider?
If you want to come off mute as well to explain, we have some time for that. So
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. So we are we are an early childhood center. So I don't think we're a family-based center. But we are, for OEC, we are license exempt. So does that make us ineligible? Okay, we are not home-based.
I think it might depend on the reason why you are exempt, but generally we do need licensed child care centers and providers who also are part of the food program, CACFP. So if you want to check in with us after or shoot an email, then we can figure that out.
Okay.
But probably maybe
Yeah, so I mean, so we do have CACFP. But I think that this whole license exempt thing is just a question for me. So maybe if you have a few minutes, I can wait and have other people ask their questions. And if you don't mind hanging on, I'll wait until the end. Does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
because we'll have to dig a little deeper into your location and just other things.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll hang out, let other people ask their questions, and I'll wait for the end.
Okay. I think
Thank
I
you.
saw, you're welcome. I think I saw a question that one of the providers wanted to do both CSA and garden. And that we would love you to do that, but it's not for this grant, it's not allowed that you do both. So providers would have to choose one or the other.
So I
Yeah,
had a,
I would just add that a strong application will reflect deepening one or the other. All right, Kathy, go on.
I am from a RESC, a Regional Education Service Center, which is not required to be licensed for Head Start programs. However, we are in the process of applying for a child care license because we're starting infant toddler programs through OEC. But that license is pending. So we don't have a number that I can give you yet. But as a RESC, we are not required to have a license.
Do you have any idea when you will be coming out of pending status? Do you see yourself coming out of pending status?
I'll have to check with the Head Start director. And I can do that certainly before this grant is due. But when I did a license or started a license for another site, she had indicated to me that it would take a good 8 to 10 months for the licensing because there's so many requirements. So I really don't know when we're going to, I really don't know when we will have a number to put into an application.
If you can also hold on and stay on so we can ask you a few more questions, because if I'm understanding you correctly, you are currently licensed exempt.
Correct.
I
will hold on, yes.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
I see another one that says, can home daycares that don't have a child at this time, but will in March apply? And yes, if you don't have children right now, but you would need to have children at the time that the grant is being awarded. So just make that clear in your application. And I feel like there was another question.
Also, if you could let us know how many children you are anticipating that you'll have once that would be helpful. Okay, next question. I'm sorry, I cannot see the chat. I might be able to see like half of a question and all of a sudden it disappears. So somebody couldn't read the
I can see
question.
the chat too also. So,
okay.
Or if it's easier for somebody to come off mute, we can do the awkward coming off mute. And I did put, again, the link to the website that has all this information. It has my contact, Deb's contact. If there's things that come up as you're going through the application, to please reach out to us. Well, maybe we'll end our recording here. And Deb and I can hang on, and it looks like folks are going to get about 13 minutes of your day back.